Happy Friday, and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. It's been a great week. A lot going on here around Nebraska athletics and the Super Bowl, the big game coming up here on Saturday. And we did this a couple years ago, and we said, you know what? Let's bring Zac Taylor back on. He was just in Lincoln, was at a Nebraska basketball game to watch the Huskers beat Illinois. And, you know, with some Huskers playing the Super Bowl and some other angles, you know, why not have an NFL former Husker join us? So let's go right to headline number one and welcome in former Husker quarterback Zac Taylor, the last offensive player at Nebraska, by the way, to win a Conference Player of the Year, Zac.
Oh, I didn't know that. But
come on, Zac. You had to know that.
I don't like being free during Super Bowl weekend, so we got to put an end to this thing. So too many times I've had to do that.
Well, yeah, let's get into it, Zac, because you were here a couple weeks ago or a little over a week ago to watch Nebraska, Illinois, and we were talking off air, and there may not be a bigger Nebraska basketball fan household in the state of Ohio than your house. And for you, it had to be a real joy to take your sons and watch a game in Pinnacle Bank Arena.
It's awesome. You know, just working in professional sports, I had that connection as a kid, being an Oklahoma fan and then going to Nebraska, being fortunate to have really strong ties to a college. And so I really want my kids to have that. And so with my two sons, we've created that with Nebraska basketball and football and all the other sports. And so I've only gone to the game at Indiana last year with Brooks. I took both sons to the March Madness game in Memphis.
Oh, yeah.
But we've never been to PBA. And so David Graff's a close friend of mine that works over at Huddle. And so he got his seats over there. And so we flew up, spent less than 24 hours, and got a chance to see him beat Illinois. And a really exciting game. So I was fired up to be able to come to that.
And so you and your boys, you guys watch Nebraska basketball games regularly?
All the time. If I'm in season, I've got it on the TV. That's like the ambiance fireplace behind me. So usually as I'm walking tape, I've got it on in the background during December. But then in the off season, we sit at my house, and whenever there's a game, I couldn't stay up for the 10 p.m. Washington game the other night. But no, we're watching every single game.
And they're back in the tournament. I mean, as a coach, you can understand. You go through a losing streak, but you get your team back. They're back. I mean, they got an opportunity now to get back in the tournament. I mean, how exciting is that?
It is, and great opportunity down the stretch here. You know, with some of the opponents, everybody's good, and you got to take care of them. But I think tremendous opportunity in front of us. And you know, my next door neighbor came with us to the game. He was an Illinois alum. He's from Champaign, Illinois fan. So for us to get him the other night was huge for bragging rights on the street. And we know it's going to come up again in the tournament, so we got to be ready to make it 2 in a row when we play those guys.
Yeah, I think I can bring this up. There's an amazing moment in the Nebraska-Illinois game with a minute left. Juwan Gary came over and said hi to you. It was like a 2-point game. I saw it. I was like, man, Juwan. Were you surprised, startled?
I was surprised. I was startled. You know, usually I've got my wits about me to be able to carry on a conversation, you know, and when somebody just starts talking to me out of nowhere, I was not equipped to interact with Juwan there with a minute left. So he turned around and shook my hand. I'm not even sure, you know, I think David said something, you know, a fan of the Bengals or something. And I circled back after the game, you know, and congratulated him on the win. But yeah, that one caught me off guard a little bit, but my boys loved it.
Now, Zac, one of the other highlights of your trip, you got a chance to see Nebraska's new facilities, and you've been to a lot of colleges now with your coaching career, and getting to see Nebraska's. What were your thoughts just on what they've done here over the last couple of years?
Second to none. I've been to them all. There's no comparison, and you can name the top of the top. I mean, it is first class. They spent a lot of time and energy, obviously, over the last several years. It's as impressive as you get, you know, and so I think they've done a great job with how they structure the efficiency for the players, working through that facility. It's top of the class. I would have to imagine recruits, when they see it, they're wowed. Probably my biggest selling point, if I was going back into college and playing again, is that you don't have to walk around the stadium to enter all the lunch in the locker room in those cold days in January and February when you had to fight the wind.
Right.
So for me, selfishly, it wasn't even all the bells and the whistles. It was the fact that you could walk straight from a class and save yourself another 10 minutes from walking outside and go right in the building. But really impressive. Everybody that's a part of that did a job well done. And I promise you, it stacks up on top of anything I've ever seen.
You mentioned the word efficiency, so I get where you're coming from. But as a coach now, as a veteran coach, what are you looking for in a facility like that? I mean, what are you specifics does a head coach look for his players?
Space, number one, space for your bigger players. If you're in meeting rooms, efficiency from time from a team meeting room to a positional room. They had the walkthrough area with the giant video board that is right outside their team auditoriums. And so from a special teams meeting to transition and go do a walkthrough saves you minutes that you have to work into your schedule. And I know in college it's even stricter than us. They get the 20-hour rule or whatever. So that's even more critical. I know they have mapped out how long it takes to go down the escalator, 48 seconds or something, and what can you do in those 48 seconds. So it's clear they put a lot of thought into that. I think from someone who works in the profession, they did an excellent job how they structured everything and making sure it's efficient for everybody.
Do you see anything like that, Zach, in the NFL?
No.
Do you see facilities like that?
No, but again, you're not recruiting. They're agreeing to a contract, and so you don't have to at some points have some of the niceness that you got because you're not really selling that way.
Right.
And the universities, they got a ton of money obviously to be able to spend on stuff, but it was very impressive, really cool how it overlooks the fields. And, I'm sure for recruiting purposes, you can stand out there and grab a bite to eat as you're watching practice with recruits and parents. And I just think it was a really job well done. You got the turf field, you got grass fields, you got the quick access over there to the indoor. If you really want, for old time's sake, to go over to the Cook Pavilion and get some, and make sure your knees are all beat up after a practice, then you can go into the Cook Pavilion and get a practice in there for old time. Get some shin splints in there from 200s, So however you want to do it, you can use all that area they got over there.
Zach, you also, you've met Dylan Raiola before, and you got to run into him and Glenn Thomas. I know when you were here. What are your impressions of Dylan just as a person? Because obviously his father's a Husker just like you, and you're familiar with the family from your connections here to Nebraska.
Incredibly down to earth, just the humbleness of him when you see him. And I've seen, interactions on the Huskers website and all that stuff that he has with fans and going to high schools and interacting with other sports. Very genuine, and approachable. I think those are words that when you're able to describe a quarterback who's the leader of a program, that's so important. And just impressive. He's a true freshman this year. Doesn't carry himself like that. And so, of course, my sons, they love watching him play. And I think I gotta speak carefully on how to assess as an NFL coach. I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but I know my sons are big fans of his, and I was really impressed with how he interacted with my family and appreciative of that. And so again, it's obviously we're big Nebraska fans, and we're happy that he's a quarterback there.
Just doing my due diligence here, Zach. How old are your sons?
My Brooks is 14 and Luke is 12.
Okay. Now I want to get a Super Bowl question, and you played it. I mean, you coached in the Super Bowl as the 2021 season, and I'm always amazed by the magnitude of that game. What is there anything, Zach, that you remember that sort of illustrates just the sheer magnitude of that period as you're getting ready?
Well, I'll go the opposite direction on you.
Okay.
You can really isolate yourself to where you don't for the week that you're there leading up to the game. Maybe don't feel the magnitude as much because so I was surprised. I think the next year and the year after, as I'm seeing all the talk radio shows and I was so isolated from that. And maybe the players weren't as much as the coaches were, because we're just in there watching tape and doing extra, and we don't have a TV on, and we're not checking Twitter or any of that stuff. And so it was like after we played the game the next year, I'm like, man, this is a big deal nationally, more so than you realize when you're playing the game. But I was also a little bit post-COVID, so we didn't have the big Super Bowl media frenzy like we did when I was previously at the Rams. All that. We didn't have that when I was at the Bengals. We were just in a room on Zooms. So that, I think, increases the exposure, and you think a little bit like, man, this is pretty cool. But we didn't get a chance to experience that part in 2021.
Zach, I want to go back to something you said earlier, players that you get signed contracts. Well, honestly, college football has gone to that route too, with just recruiting and NIL and how much things have changed just from your chair with where you're at. How have you seen NIL just even affect the draft process with the I think I read something like 75 underclassmen declared, which is far lower than what we've seen in past years, because the NIL money is obviously more for a lot of these athletes that they're going to make to stay an extra year of college.
I don't notice it yet, because we'll get into these draft meetings here in the next month. So that information will become more available to me. you just look at the prospects that are in there, and you evaluate them, and you can't worry about the guys that didn't come. And so whether that'll lessen the pool, eventually those guys are all going to come in. It all catches up. So whether they're staying in next year or not, that's a great interaction with me and Trey. I'd love to know what we're saying there. But it is interesting because these guys come in with money. One thing that kind of stands out a little bit is when you find a guy for being late or missing, does it have the same impact it did 3 years ago? When it's a $5,000 or $15,000 fine, these guys have a lot more money than what they originally came in with, several years ago. And so you got to start dealing with that a little bit on what's the best way to approach these guys when there's issues like that.
Zach, another kind of trends type question. Think in terms of trends. What do you see from young quarterbacks now that you like? What do you notice about is there anything you notice about young quarterbacks that you like? And are there maybe things that concern you too?
Well, I think the expectations have changed over the last 10 to 15 years where these guys are expected to come in and play pretty quickly.
Okay.
Especially when you take them in the first round. I think these guys are really prepared. I think they're prepared because the offenses have evolved to be more inclusive to what these guys are doing in college. To where when I first got in the league in 2012 coaching, man, if he didn't play under center, it was hard to have a vision for how you're going to train this guy to get under center and get up to speed and be able to help you quickly. Now there's so much crossover between the college scheme and the pro scheme where these guys are able to get in here and hit the ground running. And there's so much more. I'm hiring a college coordinator to come up and coordinate in college 1-for-1, whereas used to it wasn't always that easy. And so I think it's a lot easier for these guys to come in here and hit the ground running. And the expectation has been that they're come in and hit the ground running. And so it's kind of how you frame everything. But these guys have been impressive. There was a good crop of quarterbacks this year that came in and all impacted their team in a really positive way and played at a really high level.
Who are we talking about there, Zach?
Which one? Well, you've got some outstanding. I'm trying to look at my camera and I'm seeing some pictures below.
Yeah.
And I'd love to think through maybe what I was thinking about or yelling about on some of these clips. He's always talking to me about my father-in-law. So Mike Sherman and Andy work together at Green Bay. So they have a long history there. So that's usually our interaction.
Yeah, I know you have a rivalry with the Chiefs, but what is Andy Reid like to deal with?
He's the best of the best, and he's got the experience. He's been in all the big moments. I've always appreciated our interactions together, and ton of respect for him. And obviously he's the greatest coach to do it. That's in the game right now. It's really impressive.
I was going to go back to that quarterback discussion a little bit. How much more important is the running element now at that position? Going back to, we'll say 2015, 2012.
Right.
How much has that evolved?
Well, it's increased. I think the last 4 years, it's evened out a little bit, but it is a jump from 10 years ago. How much people are asking their quarterback to run, and maybe it's because there's more openness to that style of player that can do both, and willingness to use some of those guys. And we're not as willing to do that with Joe, but some of these guys, that's a weapon they have, and it's utilized and causes a lot of conflict, with your defense. And so I think those totals, those last 4 years have been a jump from the 4 years before that. And it can be a tough thing to stop.
Zach, as we wrap it up here with you, I want to ask you about the Super Bowl here on Sunday. I mean, what's your feel for this matchup? It really feels like a toss-up. Obviously, the Chiefs are a slight favorite going in, but the Eagles, when they run the ball, they're hard to stop.
Both teams are really good football teams, and then they're really well coached. I think probably a lot of attention is on the players. These are two coaching staffs that are veteran staffs. These guys have a lot of experience. They're at the top of their profession. So having a plan to utilize their players and combat whatever the other team's going to do, it'll be fun to watch. I just kind of watch the game and enjoy it as I watch it, and then you go back and you study the tape afterwards to really understand what happened over the course of the game. And so it'll be a good one to watch.
All right. Well, Zach, we appreciate you taking some time here as you guys get into your NFL draft prep work here in the coming weeks ahead.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Always love talking about the Huskers, and always enjoy talking with you two. You two have treated me so well. Going back, it's scary. I'm going to say 20 years now. I don't know who that hits more, me or you guys, but it's been a long time.
Clearly I'm the one who's aged the most, Zach. But thanks a ton. We appreciate you a lot.
Of course.
Hey, thank you, Zach. And thanks again to Zac Taylor for joining us here on Husker Online Headlines. Before we get into headline 2, Husker Online Headlines brought to you by Public Rec. If you're not familiar with Public Rec, check it out. They've got high-level premium men's gear, lots of different color options. It's simple. It's comfortable. You can wear it to work. You can wear it to the gym. You can wear it out and about. They have the styles that are going to, most importantly, make you feel comfortable for any type of occasion that you want to do it in. Lots of different great color options, as you can see here on the website. Check their website out at publicrec.com and use the promo code Husker at checkout, and they are going to give you 20% off your order. Go to publicrec.com, use that promo code Husker, and you'll receive 20% off your order of Public Rec. Thanks again to Public Rec for sponsoring us here on Husker Online Headlines. But man, back to Zach. What a first-class guy. And we say that all the time as headline 2, let's react, and also talk Super Bowl here as well. But there aren't too many better human beings than Zac Taylor.
Yeah, and you can see why he's ascended to that head coaching position. He's been the Bengals head coach since, I believe, 2019. And he's a leader. He's affable. He thinks on his feet, and you could see it. You can see it in that interview. We hit him with a variety of topics, and you can tell he's at ease talking about him. I thought his comments, Sean, about the facility were the most interesting. About Nebraska's, Sean, I always put $165 million tag on that. Is that 165? Is that what?
Yeah. I always say though that was pre-COVID pricing.
So you think it's closer to 200 million?
If they had to like redraw it all up and requote it, for sure.
So Zach, I mean, he was very complimentary of it, obviously, but also the functionality is probably the key. I mean, just that part of the student athlete doesn't have to walk around the building anymore to get into the stadium, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that 165 though, think about 2019 in September when they announced it.
Yeah.
And how much the world has changed and how much things have gone up in cost since September of 2019. So there's no doubt that that's over 200 million in today's market. No question.
Yeah, and they probably got it done just in time. I mean, I don't know. Could you do that during the NIL era?
I don't think so. I think right now, well, first of all, Troy Dannon is fighting. He would have been fighting a 3-front war because he's got NIL rev share dollars to raise with the collective, the stadium project, and the facility project.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot.
They were able to, I mean, the Frost regime was able to get that in there. And
yeah,
they were, I mean, the timing, they got, I don't want to say lucky, but it timed out for them to get that facility done. Cause I don't know if they could have, and Trev always said that they probably wouldn't do this today if they were starting over.
It was interesting what Zach said, like in terms of informative comments. Did you notice what he said about it's accommodating to large players? That you have to think about stuff like that. You and I probably don't think about stuff like that, but you have to accommodate 6'5", 270-pound players. A lot of them. You just don't have one or two on a Power 4 football team. You have a bunch of big guys, and you have to build the spaces to accommodate to make sure those guys are comfortable. So Zach, obviously, he took a tour of it, and it was interesting to me, I guess, how detailed he could talk about it. It obviously made a big impression on him.
Well, and it's a separator for Nebraska. Earlier today, Troy Dannon actually tweeted a video of the weight room in action and just kind of saying this is where wins are built in February. And when you see just the full scope of the weight room and just the size of it and just how many players can be in there comfortably, and compare that to the old weight room, which at that time was considered to be cutting edge, but it wasn't big enough to have the entire team in there. They had to break it up into sometimes 3 sessions.
Right. So that's big. I mean, everything is very detailed right down to they know how long it takes to go down an escalator, 48 seconds. What can you get done in 48 seconds? It's very high. It's just a high level. We got a tour of it, but we didn't get the full tour, right? I mean, when we got it, we didn't really get the full tour when we saw it, did we? The media?
We did. I mean, the food thing was the training table was the last piece, and we've not gone in there, because that didn't open until August. But yeah, Megan's we're trying to get the video pulled up of what Troy Dan and having some problems getting that pulled up, but
that's okay.
The training table portion of it is top notch. I mean, what they've done with the food and what they're able to do for the athletes, but then this is the sheer size. And, Troy Dannon made some comments to the newspaper about some other things, some other ideas that they have coming. Like there's a chance that they could use the Hawks indoor center now as part of the game day experience where, it could be kind of an indoor fan area to have food and drink. Because people forget there's going to be alcohol on the facility, on the site this year. But look at the weight room here. Look at this.
That's amazing. I mean, I haven't even seen it from the aerial view like that. Is striking. I haven't seen that.
I mean, it's like the size of a Walmart.
So that was going on today or yesterday?
Today, this morning.
Whoa. See, now this is it's a good something to have in your mind. That's what they're doing. I always have that question for you. What are the guys doing right now? What goes on in a football program in February, mid-February, whatever the hell it is? Look, there's what goes on.
It looks like every station probably has 3 guys on it or 2 guys on it. So you don't have to wait in line. I mean, that's the other thing. When you have space like this, maximum work can get done.
Maximum work. And then I thought Zach, his comments about Dylan Raiola were interesting. I don't think about things like this enough, probably. The fact that Dylan is approachable, affable, that's important for a quarterback. I mean, maybe I can just see the comments. Oh, God, Sipple, did that just dawn on you? Kind of. Not every quarterback I've dealt with at Nebraska is that way.
Like Casey Thompson, I wouldn't have called very approachable.
Not really approachable.
Jeff Sims kind of kept himself. Yeah. I'm going in order here.
They're not always that way.
Adrian was pretty approachable.
Hold on. Adrian was really approachable.
Like very friendly.
Yeah, Adrian high level.
Taylor Martinez, his personality, he just didn't have he wasn't real outgoing. Yeah.
I'm not saying he wasn't approachable.
I liked Taylor, but he didn't have a lot of personality.
Now Dylan has a lot of personality, and Dylan is extremely approachable. I mean, he's just a nice dude. I mean, that's Dylan. I'll always remember meeting him for the first time in Norman. He was just a kid. It was when Nebraska played there, and Dominic said, I want to introduce you to Dylan. I want you to meet him. And he was just Dylan's just so pleasant when you meet him for the first time. He's a pleasant individual. I like that part of Dylan. And we'll talk more about it later in the show.
It was funny. Zac Taylor met him at Ohio State for the first time when he was speaking at Ryan Day's.
Ryan Day brought him into the office because he had Dylan in there. And Ryan Day didn't put it together. He said, Ryan Day was thinking, hey, I'm going to impress this kid because we have the Cincinnati Bengals head coach in there. Ryan Day didn't put it together that, the Cincinnati coach played quarterback at Nebraska.
Who coaches a quarterback whose whole family went to Nebraska? Right. Joe Burrow.
Right. Exactly.
Now, Joe Burrow, not a Husker fan. He's made that very clear.
It was a lapse, though, by Ryan Day. But anyway, his comments about Dylan were interesting to me that way, that really helps to have a quarterback who is like that. It does. I mean, obviously, it's kind of common sense.
Super Bowl this weekend, too, and 3 former Huskers in the game. Cam Jurgens, the headliner, he'll start at center. He's confirmed that he's healthy this week. That's great. Starting center. Nick Gates is a reserve active roster player. Then O'Shawn Mathis is a practice squad player. But then Terry Braden will be the D-line coach, assistant D-line coach for the Chiefs. And then Dennis Merritt is the cornerbacks coach for the Chiefs, the father of Dawson Merritt. So you've definitely got
Jurgens.
A lot of connections and ties to Nebraska in this game on both sides. I mean, from the coaching level to the player level.
Yeah, the Jurgens story is obviously the most interesting one to Nebraska fans because he's the most recent second-round pick. Had to replace or gets to replace a legend in Kelsey, and has done a great job. And he's playing for maybe the best offensive line. He's playing on maybe the best offensive line in the NFL. It's a very powerful offensive line. I mean, it's really, really, really. This is an amazing time for Cam, and it's a credit. He was able to come in and assimilate that quickly. Sean, do you understand? Now, I know you don't follow the NFL that close. Do you understand?
I follow the NFL.
I was just see if you're paying attention.
No, I'm trying to interact with our producer. So just bear with me. I'm running a show here too.
Yeah, the Eagles' offensive line is maybe the best in the NFL.
And I want to show you the kind of athlete that Cam Jurgens is. This is a video that we shot at Husker Online years back when we were with Rivals. And Cam Jurgens was a tight end. To give you an idea of the level of athlete he is, Sip, he's coming in this video as a tight end, catching passes from Trevor Lawrence. And that's Justin Fields right there, throwing him balls.
Wow. God, he's smaller.
Yeah, I mean, he's catching passes. I mean, how many offensive linemen in the NFL caught passes from Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, not that
many.
I
mean, that's what an NFL athlete. Look at him playing running back drills here. I mean, I think people forget, and the videos are up right now, Steve, as you're not watching. That's what I was trying to get queued up, and then you don't watch. I'm going to give you crap because you give me crap for not paying. But
yeah, I was giving you a little taste of your medicine there.
Well, yeah, this is what I'm trying to get to give you an idea of the level.
Yeah,
of
I see it.
Athlete Jurgens is so. To transform this type of athlete into an O-lineman, it's just a remarkable story.
Yeah, it is.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we go to headline 3 on that awkward transition, Mr. Sipple, it's sponsored by who?
Oh, hold on.
Oh, is that where you're getting ready? Your notes?
Yeah. Larson Motors. If you're looking for a new vehicle, how about go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City? It's one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one location. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram never has been easier. So how about start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people,
real deals. All right, let's go into headline number 3. Danny Busboom Kelly, the challenge of following a legend. And it was quite a show, Sip. I was there yesterday. The introduction, I believe Abby Barmore said they announced that about 2,000 people attended the introduction. Over 700 alone came from Adams Freeman, the school where Danny Busboom Kelly attended. She's from Cortland, Nebraska originally. But there she is with the current Husker roster. And when you look at the players they return, I mean, they're loaded. I mean, that is a loaded volleyball team that she's going to take over. When you look at the key faces like Becca Alec and
Harper Murray,
Olivia Mock. I mean, they are loaded with experience. Andy Jackson. So she's walking in to a great situation. But we talked about this. We've seen this at Nebraska. It's coming in to replace a legend. Frank Solich inherited a roster that won the national championship, and everyone kind of assumed they'd just keep winning them, and obviously that hasn't happened. It's not an easy job what she's walking into.
If there's anybody in the world that should know that, it's us. I mean, we've lived it. We should be the foremost experts on the topic of, does it automatically happen when a legend retires? Does it just carry over to the next person? We are more equipped than most people to answer that question. And what we've seen is it can be really difficult. It obviously can happen, but if you think it through, there's a lot of places where it hasn't. There are some that where it has, but with Nebraska football, it didn't happen. A legend, Tom Osborne, retired at a pretty young age. And I will say this, though, Sean, I wasn't of the mind that it was going to be automatic. I never was. I didn't think it would just necessarily roll on like it did. And it really didn't. Now, the drop-off wasn't as extreme as some people would lead you to believe. Frank was like 58-19, Frank Solich.
Well, 99, 2000, 2001, those 3 teams, if they weren't number 1, they were like 2 or 3 at one point of the year. I mean, so Frank had three of those 4 first years were national championship level teams.
Yeah. So
99 easily could have won it if they were able to get the correct draw, but they were knocked out of the BCS finals because of the loss to Texas.
Yeah, at the end of that season when they beat Tennessee in the Fiesta Bowl, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That was a lot of people felt that was the best team in the nation at that time. So yeah, and then then they had the rough season in 2002.
Well, in 2000 was the year Oklahoma won it.
Yeah.
And Nebraska blew a 14-0 lead in Norman, and then Oklahoma stormed back.
Yeah, that was rough.
I remember when they were up 14-0.
Yeah.
I'm like, Oklahoma's not as good as we think, and Nebraska's going to roll these guys.
Yeah, and then it just caved in.
Then it was like 36. I mean, they got smoked.
Caved in. I'll always remember that day.
That was a turning point in Nebraska football.
It was a turning point. I can remember that there were still like people parading around the stadium in their cars like 5 hours after the game.
It was an 11 a.m. game in Norman, and I remember leaving. There were beer cans everywhere. Yes. But yeah, just
all getting back to the topic here, she has an enormous challenge, but there's so much in place for it to keep rolling. And one of the things that are in place is her assistant coaches, where you just saw Kelly Hunter next to her and Jalen Reyes. That really helps. I mean, the facilities really help. The NIL structure really helps. The rev share, they'll be fine. Everything is in place for it to happen, but you just never know. John Cook was you're kind of doing a disservice to John if you just say it'll naturally happen with another coach. Oh, so anybody can do it? No, not anybody can do it. But they got somebody that gives you the best chance. I fully believe that.
What's crazy to me is the 8 years she was at Louisville just flew by. Like I almost didn't realize it was 8 years. Like,
yeah,
it felt like she was just here.
2 Final Fours. I mean, this all was a no-brainer, like Troy Dannon has said. It's hiring DBK is an absolute no-brainer, in large part because of what she did at Louisville. Didn't take over a great program and led it to 2 Final Fours, and this year led it to the national title match. She's got it. She's got the it factor.
Becca Alec, I thought, was outstanding yesterday. Just speaking on it and how devastated at first she was to hear the John Cook news, but then relieved that it was Danny Busboom Kelly. Like, I think everybody was hurt to lose John Cook because they had no idea. So the players were told to come in for a meeting, and Becca Alex, like, I'll be honest, we were led to believe it was an NIL meeting, and she goes, we all went in there thinking we were going in to get a big pay bump.
Oh man!
And then we found out Cook was retiring.
But
then they were told the news, and they were, I think, relieved that they had closure on the next move, because a lot of times when this happens, could be several weeks, and then
good point.
You risk losing 3, 4, 5, 6 key players because of poaching. And credit John Cook for navigating this with Troy Dannon to prevent that. Because what if for 3 or 4 weeks Harper Murray's on an island, Becca Alex on an island, and you don't know who the next coach is going to be?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the way it worked out was perfect. I mean, they did a great job of keeping it in-house, no leaks. And also what you told me about the players going into that meeting and not knowing what was going to happen, thinking it was an NIL meeting, and then getting that very emotional news. Think if they would have found out by Twitter, which that happens so much. That these things, a coach retiring or leaving or getting fired, it's revealed on Twitter. And that's how they find out.
And that's what
that's a horrific situation.
Now, John may have an agent, but like in the football world, when you have agents involved, that's how that stuff gets out to like the Pete Thamels. And
God, good point.
And I think the volleyball community,
that's a good point,
and how it's covered is so different.
Way different.
And, like even recruiting, Abby Barmore, we have this conversation all the time. The athletes in volleyball don't tweet or make public their offers. So like when you're covering recruiting, you don't know what offers. It's kind of the unwritten rule in volleyball recruiting. You don't tell people who's offered you.
Right. So it is so much different.
Yeah. It's where football, like, I mean, if a coach comes in to your school, you do a huge tweet about, it's like a whole different thing.
Yeah. And like Pete Thamel's a whole different thing. There's no Pete Thamel in the volleyball world. that's just tweeting out stuff left and right. It's comes straight from agents. That's what's happening. So when there's coaching moves, I'm not being critical of Thamel.
No, he's doing his job at a high level.
Yeah, that's just the way of the world. But in football, players do find out about coaches leaving by Pete Thamel.
So then when you get called in for that meeting, you already know what it's for.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think media, including myself, can be pretty insensitive towards the players that are involved, and you just kind of like, well, they got to deal with it. Well, this situation was sort of an awakening for me to hear them talk about how they did not want the players to have to find out on social media.
This is a kind of a random example of like that. So remember that professional football league? It was the UFL or the XFL, the one that Josh Banderas played for in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
It was Josh, I think, or Tom told us a story that one of the players in the meeting saw on Twitter the league was folding.
Oh, see.
And they were still like meeting, getting ready to play. The player saw and he packed up his stuff in the middle of the meeting, and everyone's like, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "The league's done. I'm out of here." He just like packed up and left the meeting.
That's amazing. That's
everyone's like, well, "Wait, where are you going?
What are you doing?" Well, the league's folding, so I'm out.
Nobody knew. Nobody in the room knew, but it was on Twitter. Or you got a text message. I don't know, but like that's what you want to prevent is players having to learn that way. And we talked about this last week. Like, I wouldn't have felt right if I would have had a heads up or known.
Well, then you're in a tough situation.
But like,
because if you find out, Sean, that John Cook's retiring, you got to sit on that. I mean, the risk is what if people are casting aspersions. Think about it. We don't operate in a bubble. Someone else could report it, and then what you get is what from fans. Why didn't you have this?
Yeah, the thing is, though,
why didn't you guys know this? Why did this entity know and you not?
There's only 2 or 3 people, if you're being a true journalist, that you could get confirmation from on something like this and feel 100% about it.
Yeah,
it'd be Troy Dan, it'd be like 3 or 4 of the closest people to it all. You can't go like John's wife told the neighbor, and the neighbor told my neighbor. Like, you can't. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of crap gets reported now.
I know, and you weren't. Now, you probably weren't going to get confirmation from them.
Nobody would.
Right.
And as it should be done the way they did.
Right.
I mean, he deserved this moment. And
I'm so glad it worked out the way it did.
Boy, Troy Dannon was he did quite the comedy act. It was almost like a roast up there.
Good.
At the press conference, and he had a line about how there were 704 people there from Adams Freeman. And he goes, I think the population is only 600. So if you're ever going to rob the bank, today's the day to do it.
It's time to do it. They even had confetti cannons at that thing. Did you notice that?
It was
confetti cannon. He
made a long snapper joke about Lane Kelly, just saying we could have used Lane's expertise as an extra coach this year.
Yeah, that's funny.
It was, he had a horse joke about Pillin and John Cook that he didn't want them showing Danny how to ride a horse.
Oh boy.
But all right, on that note, let's go to headline number 4. Mike Eckler, we're still waiting on news on that. And Ed Foley appears to have a new role at Nebraska. But, not in this case, there is no new news with Mike Eckler other than we're just waiting for the final steps to be inked. But it's expected by probably Monday, Mike Eckler will be officially announced. And that's how this happens. But in the meantime, Ed Foley, still very much around Nebraska, just in a different role. We saw him on Saturday at the Matt Rule press conference, cross paths with him, talked to him for a few minutes. And I saw him even at the Danny Busby Kelly press conference representing the football program there at that event. And he's transitioning into more of kind of a relations role, an ambassador role to work with local coaches and kind of just be an ambassador for the program. And Coach Foley loves Nebraska. He loves it here. I think Coach Rule realizes he's got a value in other areas, and he's going to appear to stay on in a different role right now.
Like high school relations?
Yeah, high school So in past years, you had like Kenny Wilhite had a role like that. CJ Cavavos had a role like that.
Yeah, so he'll have that sort of role.
Yeah, and Troy Vincent did that role this year, and I believe Troy Vincent might move into more of a direct recruiting role.
Right.
So Ed Foley could move into this role, and he's perfect for it. I mean, how many people in this state have been to every high school and met with every coach like he's done the last 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, and it's probably a little more low pressure role than going and coaching somewhere else, right? You wonder, do you have opportunities?
Well, he's got a daughter in high school here too, so from the family perspective, and his son works here. I don't know that, but the key is he wants to be here, and I think in Matt's heart of hearts, he obviously probably didn't want to have to do what he did,
right?
But
right.
Didn't
want to, but you had to make a business decision. You can't. We've seen probably a few examples where a coach doesn't make the business decision. It's more of a protective personal decision, and don't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah,
you don't do that at Ohio State.
Rarely does that work out.
No.
And, I've been in those positions, and it's not easy. It's very hard.
Mm-hmm. It's easier said than done too, just to whack a friend.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life.
Yeah, you almost have to kind of prepare yourself when you become a boss like you. If it happens, sorry. I mean, this isn't friendship; it's business. Sorry, that's the way it goes.
And that's when you hire friends
to
work for you, that's one thing you have to think about. Like, hey, like this day might come.
Yep, 100.
And it's not.
It
easy.
came.
It came, but Ed Foley
came last year for Nebraska.
Appears to still be on in a different role. Eckler comes in. I'd imagine Eckler will be here by next week, or he might be here now. I don't know if he's. Obviously, we haven't talked to Mike, but
it's just the human resources thing that's happening. I don't know. I text. Yeah, I don't know if he's here yet or not. I don't know if he's here yet.
All right, let's go to odds and ends. Headline 5. Again, if you're not a member of Husker Online, try us out. Get your first week for $1 at HuskerOnline.com. But let's go odds and ends. Headline 5. Big one for Nebraska basketball on Sunday at 1:00. They will play Ohio State. Ohio State just beat Maryland, so they're coming into Lincoln on a high. Maryland was ranked 16th, I believe, and has one of the best net rankings. So this, again, will be another all-out brawl for Fred Hoiberg's team.
Yeah, it could be an all-out brawl. You're right. I mean, there's not many games you can point to in the Big Ten that'll be easy for anybody. And I haven't, now, Sean, full disclosure, I have not done a full scout on the Ohio State team. I know they've played well. I know they have some significant wins. Beating Maryland tells you a lot right there. It's just, when I say that the schedule's in there, thank you, Megan, for putting the schedule on the screen. When I say it lightens up, it's sort of relative. I mean, yeah, Northwestern hasn't had a great season, but it's not easy winning at Northwestern. Penn State, same way. Michigan is a bear. I mean, they are a bear. Minnesota, you'd say, oh yeah, Minnesota. I don't know. I mean, Minnesota's won some. So they've upset some people this year. So yeah, but Nebraska's just back on track. They put themselves back on track. They did something it sort of goes without saying, but how many people would have predicted that they would go 2-0 on that road swing to the West Coast?
I would say like 50-50. Splitting was kind of like, okay, get a split.
Yeah.
But beating Oregon at Oregon, I get it. Oregon's struggling, but
Oregon's struggling.
Oregon had like 8 quad 1 wins under its resume.
Right. And now something's not right with Oregon. They've lost 4 straight. Probably they're staring at 5 straight now because they play Michigan State next. Something's not right with them. But still, going out there and beating them on their home floor is an accomplishment. Beating Washington is an accomplishment. Washington was coming off of a good win at Minnesota.
And they had lost 8 in a row, all to basically quad 1s.
Yeah. So, no, those were great. Those were great wins. And so it started with beating nationally ranked Illinois on the home floor. Now you got 3 straight. And you're back in business, but still with quite a bit of work to do. So, yeah, Sunday will be rocking at the
It's going to be a hot ticket.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be very,
and then they're back Thursday. So it's Sunday, Thursday, all home this week.
So, okay.
So it's a pretty favorable draw, but you look at some of these, like Washington's 8-game losing streak. It just tells you if you're a centimeter off the ball, like you could have an 8-game losing streak.
I know, and it can happen fast. That's what we learned.
We saw it here.
Yeah.
I mean, good teams.
Yeah.
Oregon's going through it right now.
Yeah.
This league, if you're just not even
Right.
I mean, you're off. And Nebraska, I liked how they stayed an extra night out there. So they didn't fly back on the plane and sleep on the plane. Credit, you talk about well-being of everybody. Getting on a plane and getting back at Lincoln and Lincoln at like 5, 6 in the morning.
Not a good, it takes time to recover.
Like you talk about student athlete welfare. I credit Nebraska for, and that was probably the plan all along. They stayed after the game and then they got up and left at 9 in the morning.
Yeah.
Which they handled the trip right. They should be well rested for Sunday. Because you and I have done the red eye stuff. It's not fun. It sets you back.
It does. But yeah, they handled that trip really well. I mean, you know what, to a degree, that's coaching too. I mean, that's a credit to Fred and his staff that they organized that trip to a level where you could go out and win 2 games and it got the season back on track. But man, when you're facing that, you're like, man, we got to get the season back on track with 2 road games on the West Coast. Not easy to do. Not easy.
And staying on Big Ten basketball, Mike Woodson at Indiana appears to be on the way out the door. Has it been officially reported or is it just kind of assumed?
Oh, no, there's been a lot of reporting about it. And Pete Thamel, who we referenced earlier, Pete Thamel said that this will be his last season, but they're going to probably let him coach till the end. He's 66. But they're struggling, Sean. They're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament for the 2nd straight year. He's 1-2 in the NCAA tournament, 36 and 30. He's 36 and 36 in the Big Ten in his tenure. 500 coach in Indiana won't cut it. The big thing is though, if they didn't make the NCAA tournament last year, you don't make it 2 years in a row at Indiana. Geez, I mean, how do you survive that? So the next thing is who's next? And there's some great names being thrown out. The 2 that really resonate with me, and in fact, if I were the AD, I would start with Chris Beard and Cronin. Those are the names that are getting thrown out. Mick Cronin at UCLA, Chris Beard at Ole Miss.
I'll throw one more random one out there. Buzz Williams.
Oh, I like that one. I haven't seen his name come up, oddly.
Oh, it had, because you wouldn't think that, but what is his relationship like with his new AD, Trev Alberts? I mean, is that, would he, if that's a job that would get his attention?
Buzz Williams, I would love it. I would love there. Beard, though, here's the thing with Chris Beard. He coached under Bobby Knight, and he coached with Pat Knight. So
God, they're like Nebraska. They have to stay in the tree.
No, they don't have to. But I get what you're saying. They are much like Nebraska.
I mean, it's a lot like Nebraska. And then when they get out of the tree, they almost run off the guy right away.
Yeah. So there's some other guys. The Michigan coach.
God, Michigan's good.
Yeah, the Michigan coach comes up because I think he was a student manager at Indiana, Dusty May. But Dusty May parlayed kind of a student manager role into a big time. Now he's a Michigan's head coach.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, May is a name to watch.
Yeah, Dusty May's definitely a name to watch. But I think this Cronin would be fascinating at that place. Cronin has gotten UCLA back on track.
Why would that be a better job though than UCLA?
Well, think about UCLA and Westwood. They don't draw that well.
And the travel.
Yeah. The travel. Oh God, Sean, you know why. I mean, and it's Indiana. I mean, it's Indiana basketball. You're never gonna have to fight to get people in the building. Indiana basketball is Nebraska football.
Cronin's style
much better. It
travels too. Like the way he does it, it works.
Yeah, well, yeah, preaches hard-nosed defense, and yeah, Cronin would be really interesting because Cronin's really interesting. Beard, though, is where I would lean. Beard's just the kind of guy you could drop at any program in the world. If you dropped him at Alaska Anchorage, you'd probably be like, wait a second. Alaska Anchorage is a 4 seed. I mean, you can just drop him anywhere.
It's like Rick
Earth.
Pitino right now.
It's exactly like Pitino. There's some guys that just they're going to be successful.
St. John's is in first place in that Big East.
Yeah, they're like a 5 or 6 seed right now. I mean, Pitino's that guy. If you put Pitino at Nebraska would be an Elite 8 team in 2 years. That's just the way Pitino is. He's rare. I'm not sure Beard is quite like that. But I'm telling you, if you drop Pitino and Lincoln, Pitino would have Nebraska in probably the Final Four pretty quickly.
Because guys like that know how to do it.
He's just got it. Yeah.
All right. Staying on odds and ends, big win for Nebraska softball. Sipples, as he would call her, Jordine Ball, but everybody else calls her Jordy Ball. Hits a home run, goes to complete game. They beat number 6 Tennessee.
What a story. What a story.
So
Jordy Ball misses a whole season. And by the way, Abby wrote a great story about her that she said that year off was actually good for her. It was a great
She's got 2 years left now.
Yeah, it was a great story of how, it was a bad deal that she tore her ACL first game last year.
In Mexico.
Yeah, it was wicked. But that year off, she said, actually benefited her. She got a reset. She got some time away, and it was good for her. It's amazing. It was amazing to hear her talk about it. Like it was almost like an appealing situation to her. Like, okay, this is good. I'm refreshed now.
I think she struck out 7 in 7 innings and hit a home run.
Yeah, she smacked a home run. And they beat number 6 Tennessee. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So Rhonda's got a team. It's going to be fun to watch how they do this year as they make a run at the Big Ten. And then finally, I want to hit on this in odds and ends. The Dylan Raiola, Emmett Johnson hoop tour continues. They were at Omaha West Side for their game last night, and they were at Lincoln Southwest. They've been at Lincoln North Star. It's kind of become a thing. I mean, they've created this deal where they travel with a couple other people and they go to all these different high school games all around the Omaha Lincoln area.
What you wrote that like his representation almost has to call ahead and say, hey, Dylan's going to be there.
Yeah. Somebody got a hold of the administration at Westside just to let them know, because it turns into, I sit where Dylan sits for basketball. We sit like 10 rows behind it, and it's a receiving line of people that come up to him. And, we live in a world where everybody wants to share a picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
we do live in that world.
and so everybody wants to take a picture with a guy like Dylan, and they want to share it. And to Dylan's credit, he's very good about doing that with everybody.
Oh, Dylan, this part of Dylan is amazing. He loves the limelight. I mean, he is not uncomfortable in the limelight. He likes it.
Well, I think he wanted to do this last year, but he really couldn't. He still was a senior in high school, essentially, and he hadn't won the job. So there was kind of this awkwardness of who's the starting quarterback last year. And they didn't name Dylan really until, was it before fall camp or in the middle of fall camp?
I can't remember, Sean.
But it was during fall camp. They announced him.
Okay.
So like he couldn't really operate as if he was the starter, because Matt Rule wanted to make sure he earned it and did it right. Now he's the starter, and you're seeing Nebraska have a true leader at quarterback. They had Jeff Sims before that. Even Casey Thompson, I never considered him a great leader.
Yeah, I don't know. I
don't
know
his relationship with the locker room. That's all I'll go to. I didn't look at him as like what Dylan, on the other hand, I think has all the traits that you want. And Nebraska football is very important to Dylan.
It is. It's just he's just an amazingly nice guy too. I mean, and it's good to have a quarterback like that. It doesn't mean you have to be that way. I don't want to insinuate that.
But he's embracing the role.
Yeah,
he's making millions of dollars.
Yeah, he's embracing it
to represent Nebraska and off his name. I mean, and there he. I mean, this is at Lincoln Northeast. This kid, I think it's the guy at Lincoln Northeast. They have one really good player.
Oh yeah, I should know his name.
He hit like 8 threes in the game.
Yeah, that's probably him right there.
Northeast versus North Star played for the HAC championship.
What's that mean?
The Heartland Athletic Conference.
Oh, Heartland Athletic Conference. Didn't know that.
Got on all your years of the Lincoln Journal Star, reading Riley Jane and the great prep writers. You didn't know what the HAC conference was?
I don't know I ever heard it referred to that way. But no, Dylan's an interesting study. He is. He's just so comfortable around people. It's amazing.
All right, so we will have a little bit different of a show schedule next week.
Real different.
Because Sipple and I and Robin and Abby, we're heading out to Nashville for some on-3 meetings, and we're leaving Monday. So we will have a Husker Online show that drops on Monday, and then we'll come back, I believe, on Friday with a headline show. So we're only going to do 2 shows, but the exciting part is Steve Sipple gets to have a couple days in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what's in. I haven't even pondered it that much, but I'm just looking forward to the daily. Just every day is going to be a little different.
Yeah, there's about 80 people coming in.
Okay, and we're all staying at the same
The
hotel.
W Hotel in Nashville.
Are we all staying there?
Yeah.
All 80.
I believe so.
Wow. And there'll be some meetings, right?
Yeah, Tuesday meetings and just
Tuesday meetings
all day and
Tuesday meetings. We get in Monday at what time?
1 something.
Okay. Do we have something scheduled?
Dinner. We're just going out to eat Monday night.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
we're going to take you out on Broadway Street.
No, we're not taking me out on Broadway Street. Although I'd like to see Broadway. I have never seen it. I know you're going to say, oh, well, you were there for the 2016 Music City Bowl. I didn't see Broadway.
We'll get
Street.
on your phone and get an Uber set up for you to get you back to the hotel.
We'll see on that. Okay. We'll see on that. No guarantees on that count. But I should see Broadway.
Well, the music, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just some wild adult spring break. It's
Right.
music.
Yeah. And yeah, it'll be fun.
So we'll
we get to go out to eat, right?
Yeah, we're gonna we're gonna go out. We're have some fun.
Yeah.
So
that's the main thing.
So we'll and you're gonna meet Shannon Terry.
Whoa. And a lot of other On3 people.
A lot of other sites will be out there. So it should be a good trip out to Nashville.
Okay.
So bear with us on the schedule change. We have 2 shows next week, not 3.
Yeah.
But we'll have a show dropping Monday. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan. Thanks for joining us on Husker Online Headlines.